Shalom from Israel. I'm Avi Melamed, founder of Inside the Middle East ITME Institute. Tunisian commentator Samir Al-Khaldi published an interesting article in Arabic analyzing the nature of the relationship between different Western campuses and the protest in the context of the war in Gaza. He identified different models, sort of speaking. For example, he talks about, roughly speaking, American campuses, saying that they have been navigating between large flexibility and tolerance of the protest on the one hand, obviously in the name of freedom of speech and expression, but then at some point they also turned into much less tolerant approach, particularly in the context of like dealing with protests that became more and more aggressive, like for example the dismantling of encampments in some of the American campuses. Then he talked about campuses in Europe, like for example Germany and France, where he categorically argued that in Germany and France, what you see often is that there has been much less of tolerance, relatively speaking, vis-a-vis elements of protest that has been viewed as if they are kind of like causing a public disorder. Then he mentioned Italy as another interesting pattern for itself, arguing that in Italy there has been an interesting combination of, on the one hand, tolerance and enabling to a certain extent the protest under the banner of freedom of speech, but then at some point, out of the desire to prevent escalation of the protest, it has basically shifted towards much more institutionalized, I would say, work of those protest bodies that basically were kind of like shifting the work from outdoor protest into some sort of like policy making, and it has been, for example, transformed into decisions in some Italian campuses of boycotting or terminating academic relationship and cooperation and partnership with Israeli academic institutions. When he's trying to look ahead, what may be the impact of that specific chapter, sort of speaking, in the context of the role of campuses, Western campuses, he comes to a couple of different scenarios. For example, he envisioned a possibility that in course of time, there will be growing tendency of Western campuses to further develop a partnership with campuses in Africa or in South America at the expense of an inner cooperation or partnership within different campuses in the West. He also envisioned potentially the possibility that campuses will become much more proactively involved in policy shaping, yet he does not exclude the possibility that once the protests will die down, the campuses, roughly speaking, will go back, generally speaking, to their traditional role, though he identified that the infrastructure that has basically enabling this protest or this wave of protest will be there, and it could be, in his words, reactivated again. I would add one interesting aspect of the story of protest in the context of the Gaza war, but it has not to do necessarily with the Western campuses, but in the Arab world itself. And the interesting figure is that while Western campuses witnessed a lot of protest, Arab campuses in the Arab world remained very numb, very calm. There has been very few reports about attempts of organizing some protest in those campuses. Those attempts were very quickly shut off. There has been a very clear, strong message coming from both the academic establishments as well as the authorities to the students in Arab states, basically warning them not to be engaged in protest in campuses. So this is, I think, something that is very interesting to notice when we are talking about the issue of protest, academic expression, freedom of speech, when we talk about it both in the context of Western campuses as well as campuses in the Arab world and the context, of course, of the war in Gaza. I'm Avi Melamed. Thank you for watching.